Okay, so here is, as promised, but somewhat late, a report on our latest 3 hour marathon attempt. Say latest, we seem to have a string of 3 hour marathon attempts now. And
Yeah.
we're building up a little stock of 3 hour marathon attempts. But everyone's a learning experience, so hopefully we'll learn something from this one.
Yeah. And the only
Okay.
reason there's such a string of them is because I can't seem to go under three. Cause, like, Alan, you did it last year. So it would have only been 2 attempts because you got it on the second try. But see, I'm not a
Yes,
fast learner. Like, it takes me a long time to do everything.
it
So
could be.
here I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah. In the spirit of being positive, I would say, you're one marathon closer to 3 hours, going under 3 hours. It's only a
Mm,
question of when it's going to happen, and you're just one race closer to it.
yeah. Well, hopefully it happens soon.
Okay, so
Oh,
from a training point of view, I guess we've talked about it a lot, so we won't spend too much time talking about our training, because if you're a listener to Running Book Reviews, you've heard all about our efforts to train and various things that we've been doing. But all to say, I think the training went well.
yeah. So maybe I'll just recap what we did.
Yeah.
We did use the advanced marathoning plan, except that it's the third time that we were using the plan, so we did modify a few things. We did use sort of like the intermediate plan. So all of the advanced marathoning plans are advanced, but they still have like 3 or 4 versions, and we used the 12-week sort of like in the middle in terms of mileage. So
Yeah.
our mileage peak was like 138 kilometers
Yeah, that
in
was
a
our
week.
that was our peak week, and we did
That was,
another week that was close to that as well, sometime
yeah.
during that. But
And
those were the peak
mostly
weeks.
those were the peak weeks. So mostly it was more like around, I don't know, 115,
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So we used that one, and what we modified was the first time around we had calculated all our paces based on our aspired marathon finish time, which meant 3 hours, and then we calculated all the paces, like what should our long run pace be and all those things. But what we did this time around is we calculated it based on the fitness that we were at the time of going into the plan, because we learned that from some of our books, one of them being Greg McMillan. He mentioned that, and you can listen to that podcast if you want to hear
Yeah.
about that. But yeah, so that's what we did. And also the one thing that we found very challenging was the marathon pace, when it got to a lot of marathon pace, because the advanced marathon plan has you start at 13 kilometers of marathon pace, you move to 16, you do 19, and then you do 23. And I was never able to do more than the 13. I think like I failed the 16 last year, and I think I did manage to squeeze out 19 kilometers at marathon pace. But 23, I think we both fell apart at around 10K, so
Yes, we
that
did.
one like
I
didn't
remember that.
happen.
It's quite hot as
Yeah.
well, if I remember rightly. Yeah,
Yeah.
for that
So what
training.
we did is we split them into intervals this time around. So we were still doing the same amount of kilometers at marathon pace, but we were
Yeah.
doing them split up. So for like the 19K, I think we had done 18K. So we did 3 times 6 kilometers, if I
Yeah,
remember
that's right.
correctly. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
kind of how
Had
we
a three
how we
minute a
divided
three
it.
minute cruise in between each
Yeah,
six
a
each
jog
6K.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, a 3 minute jog in between. And so yeah, that's pretty much
Yeah.
the plan that we used this
Also,
time.
if you look at our macro cycle, I don't want to make this too long, but I just keep getting distracted. If you look at our sort of macro cycle, what we said was, oh, we were having difficulty with the marathon pace, so let's switch in spring to the Hansen program, which has quite a lot of marathon pace efforts and less long running. So we sort of worked on our marathon pace during the training process. We worked on improving our ability at that. And then when we came into this marathon training cycle, we said, let's switch back to the advanced marathon program with Fitzinger and Douglas, because we figure that gives us our best opportunity because we're getting close. So we've worked on our weakness, which was our marathon pace, and now we need to build back up our aerobic base. So we went slower, and so in theory, we were doing a pretty good job of, learning, addressing our weaknesses, and building our training program to suit what we thought we needed.
Yeah. Except yeah, in the spring, like neither of us had a very good marathon, but it's hard to tell what the issue was because
Yeah,
yeah, we ran a lot of marathon pace. Was it the lack of long runs? But then, it's also like the spring for us here in Canada.
it's
It suddenly gets warm and
it's tough to train.
we train in the sort of 0 degrees Celsius around there. And then race day sometimes can be, 15, 20, 25 degrees because it'll be like May and it'll be all of a sudden all the nice weather decides to come out just as like it's marathon weekend as well. So it's hard to know if like what affected our race. Was it the
Yeah,
plan or was it just it being spring?
but all things considered, I think we sort of did learning, adjusted, and so we thought, okay, we're coming in. I guess if there's anything wrong, we'll have the distance and we'll be able to probably sustain the distance. And if there's anything wrong, we might just lack the top end speed that we need to make it easy to do a sub 3 hour because of
Mm.
splitting up the fast paces and those kind of things. And
So
for me, it's kind of worked out that way. So people will know by now that we didn't make it, and I did 3:07, and you did and change, and you did
306 and a
3:06.
half. Yeah.
Yeah. So we weren't that far apart. You were slightly ahead.
It was interesting because this time around we barely ran any of it together. Like
True.
usually we're really like we run
Side by
together
side.
for like
Yeah.
the first half, and this time we had very different races.
I think tactically I wanted to go off a little quicker,
Mm,
and you were more cautious,
yeah.
which is
I
kind
think I
of,
had made that mistake a lot. And so, like, I was very conscious of making that mistake, even though there was the downhill at the beginning more than at the end. I felt like it was probably a bad idea to go out and try and build a buffer because in the past that never works for me, like I always fail. So
I think
I
my
thought,
idea was to instead of be cautious, to be at least on time because there was downhill for the first
mhm,
10K. And we were sort of on target for at the 10K mark. We were approximately on target, I think. Well, on target was probably too fast for you because you were figuring on being a bit slower, but we
yeah.
were, I don't know, about 30 seconds ahead of target,
Ahead
something
of
like that.
yeah, it was about 30 seconds ahead of like what we would have needed, like the exact pace if we had just run the exact pace for every kilometer of the entire marathon. So we were like 30 seconds ahead of schedule at the 10K, but then we were like 30 seconds behind schedule at the half.
Yeah.
um
And
and
I found that quite demoralizing,
oh,
because I was intending to be 30 seconds to a minute ahead of schedule.
okay.
So being 30 seconds behind at the half, I felt I was like 2 minutes, 1.5 minutes off my plan in my
Okay,
head.
yeah.
So I found that quite shocking when we
Hmm.
went through at half and we were 30 seconds off. You probably thought, oh, not so bad.
Hmm. Yeah, I was like, oh, not so bad. The only thing was that like once we got to about 25, I don't know, that section from about, I don't know, was it 23 or 25 kilometers to like 35? It just completely destroyed me. Like I don't know, I just ended up having heavy legs and just it felt like I had to push really hard to even get close to the pace I'm supposed to be running. And I'd be you know, just working really hard and always be like a couple seconds off in the wrong direction, not a
Yeah.
couple seconds under
Yeah.
the 4:15 per kilometer pace. So it's always like a few seconds over the
Yeah.
4:15 per kilometer pace. And those are adding up. But I tried not to really think about that. It's just that I just remember it feeling harder than you would want it to because you still have like pretty much more than a third of the race left to do.
Yeah, I was exactly in that mode where in order to run the pace, the 3 hour race pace, which is about 4:15 per kilometer, 4 minutes 15 per kilometer. In order to run even near that, I was having to put in an amount of effort, and the sort of feel of it was just far too much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to tolerate for how far back I was still in the race.
The other thing I found, I don't know if you had the same feeling, but my quads just started to be like, just felt completely destroyed. And granted, this race does go like there's a slight downhill over the whole race. And most of it is in the first half. But I mean, I would have never thought that it would have been like quad smashing downhill. You know, it's not like Boston downhill or anything. It's like just a
No,
very,
it's very
very light.
gradual.
Yeah.
Yeah. We kind of
But
picked it because of that as well.
my quads were smashed like around, you know, that section that was hard. It was also that my quads were starting to get like very, very sore
So
and
not
very
enough
heavy.
downhill training, maybe. Mine didn't
Maybe.
feel too bad from that point of view. I just felt all over. I was putting in too much effort,
Mm-hmm.
running the gas tank too low. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a gel strategy. We went for Morton's, and every 6K I was doing
Yeah.
a couple of caffeinated ones, which I was sort of dropping in. I think you were doing the same.
Yeah, I was doing the same. I was alternating the caffeinated and the non-caffeinated, but I stopped taking gel probably. I think the 24-kilometer gel was my last one because at 30 kilometers I was like kind of nauseous and I thought like I don't think I could hold down a gel, so I didn't
Yeah.
take it. And so obviously same thing happened at 36 kilometers. Like I was not gonna
Yeah. So then you're
be
probably
tolerating it. So
running a little bit sugar short. I was able to get the 30-kilometer gel down, but not the 36.
mm,
I've
so you
only
did one better than me.
I've only ever got the 36-kilometer gel down once, and that was at Toronto. But then I brought it back up again when I got over the finish line.
You didn't
so,
bring it down far enough,
so
Alan.
I guess we have some tolerance things. Well, maybe we should have done more downhill training for that course.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe we should have done more strict gel intake training as well, because that's actually a thing. And I have
mhm.
to say, like, I'm not super disciplined. I'm always kind of like, I'll be able to do it I'll be
Yeah,
able to do it in the race. And then,
yeah,
yeah, then I'm not able to do it in the race, or I'm able to do it at the beginning. And maybe that's just because in training, I don't think I've ever, you know, even when we've run 35-kilometer long runs, eventually I kind of just give up taking the gels because
mm,
I don't feel like it or whatever, and maybe that's a mistake. Maybe I need to
yeah.
really just keep on, you know, every long run you take in a gel every 6K and hopefully train your gut to be able to
I mean, we've kind of got to
that.
do gels because we're not elite, so we can't have bottles placed
Yeah,
for us.
which I feel
So you
like it
can't
would be
take,
ideal.
yeah.
I feel like I would so much rather have liquid. But yeah, not elite, so
The liquid might be just more to keep down. I don't know. That would be another training
uh
program. So
yeah.
maybe we should have done some more downhill training for that course. I mean, we thought it'd be a fast course because it's got this gradual downhill to it. You know, that kind of helps you a bit.
Mhm.
But the surface also is not, it's not asphalt surface. It's sort of compressed rock, sort of bike track. Do
Yeah, it's like gravel path.
you think that had a negative effect at all? Or
So
does
that's the
one
thing.
cancel each other out, the
uh
downhill and the surface?
Yeah, you know, I like there was a coach I knew a few years ago, and this was like after the first edition of the same race. And she had said that most of her athletes, and she coached triathletes, so you know, not exactly the same, but you know, they were running that day, obviously. And she said that most of her high level triathlete group, they didn't do well in that race. And she said that it was probably the soft surface because you know it's deceiving. It probably doesn't impact you or your form so much when you're at the beginning and you're feeling energetic, but when you're, you know, when you're tired already and your form is already falling apart, it probably just like makes that worse. That's what she said. So I don't really know because um we have teammates that do this race and like do very well, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping it would give us a couple of minutes advantage.
Yeah, me
I've
too.
run the race a few times. Certainly one of the most scenic marathons I've ever run. There's no roads and you have trees on both sides and the fall colors in sort of north of Montreal. I don't know if we mentioned the name of the race, but it's called the Petit Train du Nord, which is French
Marathon,
for the little train of the north, because it used to be a train track and it's converted into a trail. So
which is why it's so
yeah,
nice and flat.
yeah. Shout out for the run because it's well organized and it's quite beautiful in terms of
Hmm.
if you want a scenic run.
Yeah, scenic in terms of nature, not scenic like I'm guessing that people that, go and do these destination runs like Disney and stuff, like it's not scenic in that way. It's more scenic like the leaves are starting to change color and you're kind of like running through the forest because this
Yeah, and there's
path
a
goes
river
through
runs
like
down beside
there's
you.
yeah, there's a lake on the side at
Yeah.
kilometer,
And
somewhere
because
in
it
the
used to
middle.
be a train track, it's very gradual with the way it slopes.
I
So
hadn't done this race for a few years, and the one thing that surprised me was just how many people came out to cheer. Like there was a lot more because the first edition, I don't remember seeing much of anybody in the first
no,
edition. And this edition, I mean, like there were people with signs and sort of like in every little village,
yeah.
which is
Every
kind of
time you went
cool.
through a little feeding spot, there'd be a big crowd of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, with shouts,
Yeah.
and you get energized every so often.
Yeah.
We just didn't get energized enough.
Yeah. It's yeah, not
In the
enough.
second half, I started to flag, and you sort of came by, and you sort of went off, and I thought, oh, that's probably the last I'll see of you. And then I'll dig a little bit and make an effort and get back up, and then you'd slow down a little bit, and then I went
Hmm.
ahead. I think we crossed each other three times.
Yeah, and like because I went through these times. I mean, you know how bad math can be when you're sort of like in the last third of the marathon. But sometimes I was like, maybe I could still run a personal best. And so I would try for it, but then I'd realize like the effort is so high. And so then I would like end up slowing down again, and then I would look at my watch and I'd be like, but I think I could run under my personal best, and I would speed up again, and but like
Yeah.
my legs just didn't have it, so I couldn't maintain it. And eventually when I was like 2 kilometers from the end, I knew I didn't have it. And yeah, then I crossed the finish line and I was just like kind of disappointed. I'm like, oh, another failure.
Yeah, towards the end, I thought, oh, she's going for a PR and she's off and pressing the gas. And you got about 100 meters ahead. Well, 100 meters probably too much. 50 meters, maybe I
Mm-hmm.
could still see you. And then the gap just didn't increase
Get
anymore.
bigger, yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I'm going to catch up, but then I didn't have any energy. I couldn't. So we ended up with that gap sort of running in.
Yeah, that's the like whatever 40 seconds or whatever we had.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess now we should talk about like we've had some time to think about this. So what should we do next? We've been using this advanced marathon plan now for a few tries.
Well, do you want to have
Um,
another go, first of all? I mean, are you just completely demoralized by the whole process that, um,
yeah, initially I told myself that 2024 would be the year of no marathons. So I was
okay,
going to not run any marathons. And then
okay,
what happened was my husband Andre, he said, well, maybe you should just run a marathon for fun. And then our club coach, Bill, he posted on our Facebook group, signed up for Ottawa,
okay.
to like, which is spring. And so then, well, Andre said he wanted to do the half. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll sign up for the marathon. So I'm signed up for the marathon in the spring after having said I don't want to do any marathons in 2024. But actually it was after signing up for that I figured, well, maybe I'll do another sub 3 attempt, but for the fall. So I know spring is not really conducive to that,
Yeah,
just because like there are just too many variables that you get on race day that you can't train for. And I know, like I've kind of thought about it. I'm like, how could I train for a spring marathon? And I guess for me, one thing would be to do all my key sessions like tempo runs, marathon pace runs on the treadmill, because then it's indoors, so it's warm because it's 20 degrees. The thing is, I don't have access to a treadmill anymore because I don't go to the office. So that's where I used to use the treadmill for free. um, And most of the gyms, if you get a gym membership, they'll always have limits on the number of minutes you can use a treadmill in a row. So it'll be like a 30-minute limit. So for a runner that's training for
Can't
a
do a long
marathon,
run.
like that's not, yeah, it's not going to be I remember going to the gym because I used to, when I wasn't really running marathons or anything, I had restarted running, and I decided that in the winter I would just run on the treadmill at the local gym. And I had gone to the local gym and they had this 30-minute limit. What I would do is I would schedule two in a row so I could get an hour.
Oh, you cheater.
No, I would schedule on one treadmill, get off that treadmill to go to another treadmill to get my other 30
Oh,
minutes. It's
okay.
not cheating. It's completely
That
fine. It's
sounds a bit loose to me. It sounds like
okay. It's kind of cheating, but
everybody's standing around and you're moving around from treadmill to treadmill and everybody's waiting around to have a go.
so that's the problem, is because if the person that had the treadmill that you're going to, if they're still on it because they're finishing up their last 2 minutes, you're
Yeah.
losing those 2 minutes. And so my hour-long run ended up being like,
Has a
55
5 minute break in
minutes
the
or
middle.
something.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine if you're just running because you want to keep your fitness for the spring to be able to run
Okay, so
outside.
you
But
so you're entered for the
anyway,
Ottawa Marathon at this
I'm now
point, which is
entered.
in
Yeah.
May 2024.
Yeah.
And so will you make a 3 hour attempt at that?
No,
You won't.
no.
Okay.
No, I
So
think
then
I'm too far from that. I
so
wouldn't.
that becomes part of your base building for an attempt
Yeah,
in the
for an
fall.
attempt in the fall. Yep.
Okay, so I'm up for that. So an attempt in a fast marathon in the fall, I'm up for that. So we'll need to decide what we're going to do.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things we've been sort of thinking about, and that's been suggested to us, is to get a coach. So instead of trying
Yeah.
to build our own plan,
Yeah.
that we get a coach. So stay tuned to see
So
if
we have
we
a
decide to do that.
who wants
But
to be our coach?
Uh,
We're
but
interviewing.
I guess the other thing that I thought of when we read Run Elite is I thought maybe we
Mhm.
could do like a hybrid. So we use the base from the advanced marathon plan, but we change up some of the workouts to include sarcomere runs, which are like those downhill tempos basically,
Mhm.
to strengthen your quads, and over distance long runs, which was something else
Yeah.
that was in Run Elite.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know that I'm up for an over distance, but I am up for a double day that's over distance.
that's fair. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm up for that. Yeah. Yeah.
That
I've
might be
done
a
I've done
little
those.
easier way of doing the over distance.
Yeah, it is. I mean, granted, you don't do them, a whole lot. Like you don't do a bunch of them, but I did. Like with a previous club I was running with, the coach was testing out a whole bunch of stuff. Every time I did a marathon, like the plan was the runs were not the same. And there was one time when I had this double day where it was 20 kilometers in the morning, 20 kilometers in the evening, and they were, both of them were the same. You did 10 kilometers easy and 10 kilometers at like sort of like marathon. You tried to do marathon pace, but it was more like marathon effort, because especially the second one, second 20K of the day, depending what your marathon pace is. I
Okay,
think at
so
the time I
when are
did
we
marathon
doing when are
pace.
we doing these? Are these part of just our messing around in the spring to keep our base up,
I
or
mean, I would be up for trying some of these as like,
yeah, experimental stuff?
experiments. Yeah.
And then mostly doing just large volume slow runs,
Yeah. So I was,
probably in the woods, in the snow, in the trails, or in my
yeah.
case, because I'm going to Australia for a couple of months, in the sunshine, in the warmth. I'll have
Yeah.
heat management problems.
Oh, I would love to
Yeah.
have heat management problems.
Just from my springs point of view, I'm going to go to Australia. In March, I'm going to run the 6 foot track trail marathon, assuming I can get in.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to come back and run Boston. I've entered for Boston, so I've got a quali. It helps being old because my time qualifies me easily for Boston. So I'm going to run that for basically, an experience. try to do, a reasonable time, not embarrass myself too much, but
Mhm.
certainly not go all out, because that's a tough marathon as well. So it's not a PR marathon as far as I'm concerned.
Except that that's a great marathon to do try those Sarkomere runs
Yeah,
prior.
yeah,
So
probably is.
you gonna do that in Australia?
Maybe, yeah.
Hmm.
That's we can share knowledge on that, and then I'll come to Ottawa, and
Hmm.
then what I've decided for Ottawa is I've entered the 5K, the 10K, and the half. So the 5K and the 10K on the day
And
before,
it has
and the
a
half
name
is on
though,
the day
right?
afterwards. Yeah, it's called
It's a
the
challenge.
stupid person's combination or something. It's not called that, but um, it feels like that. But what I'm going to try to do just for funsies is run a provincial age group record at the 5K and the 10K and the half marathon all in the same weekend,
That would be amazing.
which would
Imagine
be
if,
it's kind of a fun
imagine if
challenge.
you, and then imagine if you get your name in all three spots with like the same date beside. People
Yeah,
are gonna
that'd be
be
cool.
like, "That's so weird," but yeah,
Yeah.
yep, yeah. I think that's a cool challenge. It makes it kind of fun. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's sort of my spring, and summer I don't know, but then in fall we've got to work out
we
where we're
gotta
going to go.
pick, yeah, which marathon we're gonna do. So,
Yeah,
any
I think one thing worth
any
saying.
thoughts?
Well, one thing worth saying before we get to thoughts on fall marathons is I really enjoyed our training process. I thought our training program went really well, in that I felt good about it. I felt I was coping with the mileage. I felt I was able to push when I needed to push for, a tempo run or a lactate threshold run. So, we question whether our training program is giving us what we need. Um, but one thing that it is giving us what we need is we still enjoy, we get joy. Well, I don't know about you. You probably agree though. We get joy from the process. So that enables us
Yeah,
to turn around and go again. Um,
yeah.
we don't get to, and here's a message for everybody who's trying to hit their records. We don't get too despondent. I mean, we have the pity party.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, crumbs.
Yeah.
There's an interesting photograph of a of at the end of the marathon of you, I think, hugging one of our clubmate friends and probably crying
Mm-hmm.
while you're hugging, and I'm in the background. You can see me sort of vaguely in the background, and I look like I'm leaning against a fence. I look like I'm about to pass out. So we look we look pretty despondent at that point, but that's kind of just the moment where you don't quite achieve what you were hoping to achieve. I think apart from that, we sort of find joy in the training process, and we were able to do a big lot of work without mentally smashing ourselves up, which
Mm-hmm.
is pretty, I think, pretty important.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
think it helps though because we ran everything together. So like, this plan had a lot of medium long runs and sort of towards the last I guess 6 weeks or so, like a lot of them were 24 kilometers. It was like
Yeah,
like twice a week you'd have like to do 24 kilometers like on a weekday.
yeah,
um and then that was in addition to the long run, and so like that's a lot of hours, but because like we were together, it was always like, we were meeting up to do those. So there wasn't really this question of like, oh, should I do that?
yeah. We had a
Maybe I
good
should
buddy
move it.
system.
Yeah, like we didn't ask that question. It was like, what time are we meeting? not like
When are we running this
not
horrible
like are we
24K?
running are we running this 24K actually. And I found that by the end, like I kind of liked them. I liked them more than the other years because also the other years like we had more aggressive goals, whereas we were, our paces were calculated based on our fitness and not
Mm-hmm,
like our aspired fitness. So
mm-hmm.
it made them a lot less like a lot less of a grind, which made them kind of more pleasant. So
Somehow we have to get to a point where we can do them quicker and feel the same.
I know.
Yeah.
And I thought that at some point we should have this magical transition where like we're doing them quicker and we feel the same, but it didn't happen. And
Mm.
so I don't know. I don't know what to make of that whole thing, but
All right,
Um,
next year's sub 3 hour attempt target.
yeah.
Where should we go?
So I know that the club was thinking about what's it called? Wine Glass Marathon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in is that in New York State? That's at
Yes.
Corning.
Yeah. And so this marathon is a point to point from what I
Yeah,
saw on the website, and it looks like it's a pancake flat,
yeah.
even though Corning is like wine country, so you'd think that it's hilly because
Mm,
vineyards are usually on a hill.
yeah.
But apparently this marathon is flat, and some of our teammates have done it, and it's well organized, and it's drivable, so we'll be able to drive there.
I
I
think
think.
if everyone's doing that, just so we can have a party, I'd probably be in for that.
Mm-hmm.
If people are still talking about options, I think I would like to put Chicago on the table.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
could be good.
Yeah, I know Chicago is supposed to be a great place to run a personal best, so probably a great place to run a sub 3 as well.
If Kelvin
Uh,
Kiptum can do it, we can do it.
it's much further, so it's much more of a
So
commitment.
I wouldn't
But
mind. I've never
yeah,
done Chicago, and
I've never done Chicago either.
I mean, there's a big crowd, so I think that helps to lift you. And Toronto, which we've done a few times, I think I found that good to have crowds there cheering you on. It's
Yeah,
flat.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, Toronto is
it's
a
the
good
World
option as
Marathon
well,
Major, so you get
but
a tick in the box for that.
hmm
Toronto's also, yeah, a great one. Also, it's circular, so I could go for a record,
oh yes,
for an
yeah,
age
that's
group
true.
record.
Yeah, because
Point to points don't
um
count,
they don't count. Yeah. Hmm.
but that
I
doesn't
guess that's
matter.
something.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, guess lots of things to think about. And so this is a bonus episode, but I don't know if like people like to hear about our training. So if you do and you want more
Yeah,
bonus
give us some
episodes,
feedback.
you
Yeah.
can definitely give us some feedback. Yeah. If you prefer that, maybe we do bonus episodes about books, like, I don't know, um, like what books you should read next, or what we're currently
They
reading,
have to
or
be
I
running
don't know.
books. Have to be running
Yeah,
books.
definitely have to be running books because we don't have time to read anything else because we're too busy with our running reading.
If you have some ideas where we should go and run a marathon next fall, um,
hmm Preferably
let us know.
something that's like driving distance from Montreal, Canada. Like that would be the best because it doesn't involve flying and having
Yeah.
canceled flights and
Yeah.
worrying that like your luggage doesn't get there and all those other things that travelers these days are complaining about. So
Also, if you have a personal coach that you'd like to recommend to us, maybe we're going to look at that. That'll depend on probably costs and
yeah.
those kind of things. Okay,
Okay.
so
So, well, hope you guys enjoyed hearing about our marathon. And
sorry we didn't have something victorious to report.
yeah, hopefully next time we'll be telling you all about how we smashed our 3 hour goal, and we can have a little virtual celebration.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't think I'm too despondent about it having done it once. I was thinking having done it once, I'd cracked it, and then I would find it easier to do again. No,
Mm,
no,
it's
no
interesting, eh?
way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, we
yeah.
should
I
probably
guess
just sign off and get back to reading our running books.
we should. Yeah, I do have something to read, so because we have an interview coming up. So we hope you guys all enjoyed this, and thanks for joining us on this little bonus chat about our race experience. And thanks for following along. And I know that this was a requested chat from somebody on Instagram. So
Yeah.
so thanks for being interested in our own running
Yeah,
journey.
and more to come.
Hmm
More exciting adventures.
And even if we take like 5 more swings at this and we don't make the sub 3 hour goal, don't worry, we're not going to stop running. So we'll
Yeah.
think of some other
Yeah.
way to
And
hack the system.
we don't attach our self-worth to whether we can hit the 3 hour number or not.
You should speak for yourself.
I was speaking for myself, but I was trying to sort of hint it to you as well. You only attach your
um,
self-worth for 1 week after you make the attempt. Then
mhm.
your pity party is over and then you need to
Yeah.
get back on the bus.
Yeah, my pity party was over a long time ago.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. So that's all from Running Book Reviews. Bye for now.
Bye.